the recording. So good to see you all. Here we are again. We're going to begin with some prayers Snehi will put up. So what we're trying to do here is with words and our remembering consciousness about the meaning of the words to take refuge sincerely. That's what we're really relying on, not our own worldly skills or other factors, medicines or other things that we're relying on the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and then developing bodhicitta as the motivation for taking part in the class. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunin ki pe sognam ki dola penchir sangye drupa sho. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit wandering beings. Is my present choice for droa rather than migrating. Migrating sounds has political implications at the present time. Sangye chodang soki chognam la changchu badu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunin gi pe sognam ki drola penchir sangye drupa sho. And then at the beginning, making a short mandala offering, both as a request in order to, and as the epitome of collecting merit in order to be successful, by offering this ground that I visualize, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm. May all wandering beings enjoy a pure realm. And requesting our primordial guru who guides us all, O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma in this text, the Gomparapso, both the vast bodhisattva deeds and the profound meaning of emptiness are explained precisely in accordance of the needs of those who are listening and are those to be trained by this text. Idam Guru Rana Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, thank you. So hello, KT has arrived, Rocio's here. So we're going to meditate for a couple of minutes to try to, in our own experience now, mirror the meaning of those words, right? So usually we don't spend, in our meditation, we don't spend so much time talking about the meaning of refuge, but more the meaning of the perfect human rebirth and the meaning of bodhicitta and emptiness and so forth. But you can also think of refuge during this time. So sit comfortably, as usual. Place your attention on the breathing in front. Once you've recognized it, keep it in mindfulness. Simply recognizing when you're breathing in, when you're breathing out, and whether it is a long breath or a short breath. And as your mind is slightly relaxed and unburdened by the continuity of thoughts that were occurring before, place your attention on the much more subtle object of your mental consciousness. It's just recognizing the consciousness in general through its contents. Drawing your attention away from your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body consciousness. Whatever content is there, recognize it as being like clouds or like a cloud in otherwise clear spaciousness of your mind. Focusing on that clear light nature. Whenever thoughts arise, wrestling your attention away from them and investing in it instead, investing your attention instead on that awareness of the clarity. See if you can understand that this clarity implies the lack of any obstructing contact of the consciousness, any obstruction of the mental consciousness to the entry or reabsorption of mental phenomena, the things that we think about. This is what's called our conventional Buddha nature. The fact that we can develop good qualities and dismiss bad qualities, this developmental Buddha nature, as opposed to the ultimate nature of our mind, which is called the non-abiding Buddha nature, the ultimate Buddha nature. This is the conventional Buddha nature. But something that if we put our attention to it, we can recall a blissful response to that, having analyzed it before, that this means that we are not who we think we are now. We can change. We can develop good qualities. We can get rid of all of our known and unknown faults. Some faults we know we have, some faults we don't know we have. So we're okay. Besides that, we have this moment, auspicious moment of a life of leisure and endowment. Which we had worked very hard in previous lives to create the karma for through the practice of morality, mainly abstaining from negative actions and working for the welfare of others, collecting virtuous dharmas, and through the practice of charity, also patience and so forth. Now we have all of those causes coming together, ripening in this life of leisure and endowment right now, with which we can recognize that Buddha nature. Amazing coming together of various factors, recognizing that we could use this life as we had for many years, satisfying our own desires, following the 8 worldly dharmas, wanting to feel good, wanting to be rich, wanting to have possessions, wanting to be powerful, wanting to be famous, wanting to be loved. Fixated on the appearances of this life alone. Now we can go beyond that and work for liberation from cyclic existence, to finish this whole recurring, ever-turning wheel of samsara, to get off the racetrack of samsara. We can do that with this perfect human rebirth, or at least make the first steps toward that, but more generously, more intelligently, the Buddha said, those of his disciples with wisdom should look upon his Hinayana teachings, his lesser vehicle teachings, as surpassed by the Mahayana teachings. Not to get on the small vehicle that leads to your own nirvana, your own liberation alone, but to get in the great vehicle of the Mahayana, where you've taken cognizance of the suffering of other sentient beings, out of empathy for them, developed compassion and love, great compassion, wishing to free them from that suffering, having recognized they've all been our mothers and raised us, nurtured us with kindness again and again, numberless times, depthlessly kind, taking the responsibility to alleviate their suffering, and then having recognized the only way to do that is to ourselves to become enlightened. Otherwise, we're so limited in what we can do. To develop the thought of bodhicitta, I must achieve enlightenment for the sake of all mother sentient beings. In order to do that, we need the accumulation, the collection of merit, and the collection of wisdom, which we know something about, but not a lot about, especially the accumulation of the collection of wisdom, which is explained particularly in Chandrakirti's Majjhima and Lama Tsongkhapa's Gompa Rapso that we're studying, commenting on that, especially here in this 6th Bhumi. The reasonings to refute production, inherent production, these 4 extremes. So I'm going to listen today with the intention of accumulating, understanding how to accumulate wisdom and merit in order to become a fully enlightened Buddha, for the sake of thereby being able to lead each and every sentient being spontaneously, effortlessly, and without error out of suffering into everlasting happiness. I'm going to listen to the teachings, contemplate and meditate in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, so bring your attention back slowly. I saw Ida there for a moment. There she is, okay. And KT, Rocio, Jennifer's off camera. The iPhone may be Chris Hopka up in Wisconsin. Okay. So how are we doing? How was your meditation? Good. I was on some call the other day when I made some gesture like that. Their little icon came up of the thumbs up as though it was recognizing my mudra. I can't remember what that was. Interesting. So Rocio, how's your meditation that we were doing right now? This continuing meditation that we're doing?
Thank you, Venerable. I was distracted.
Okay. That's a good observation. That itself is useful. Even not so good meditation has its uses. You can analyze how come I was distracted and why was the antidote of trying to concentrate on the breathing and this not successful to overcome that distraction. Because that's the point. When you're distracted, we say yengwa. There's different kinds of yengwa. The major kind of distraction is what we call excitement, when you're paying attention to something that's kind of attractive. But it can be like worry, distracted about your son or your income tax or something like that. That's another kind of distraction. So we need to, at the beginning, when you first sit down, remind yourself, I don't have to think about those things now. By developing a clear mind and letting go of the sort of the continuity of these conceptual thoughts that fire up our delusions and make us unclear and unable to deal with them. By letting go of them, I can solve them better later. So I don't have to think about them now. I'm just going to, be firm with myself like a Swiss school teacher. No offense to the Swiss. Swiss. I always think of Swiss being very, very stern teachers, with the ruler, slapping your fingers if you do something wrong. Maybe German also.
Definitely not Mexican.
Just not in Mexico.
Okay. Definitely not strict, not in Mexico.
Oh, okay. So to be strict with yourself beforehand, remind yourself, I don't have to think of that now. I'll be able to better deal with it after my meditation with a clear mind, with a Dharma motivation. So that's my suggestion there. So that's a good observation. I wasn't successful, and to try to figure out why. Okay. So any questions from our previous class or classes? How are we doing? KT, you have anything?
Quick question from the meditation is the developmental clear light mind, is that the same as the consciousness that is in the 12 links of dependent origination? Is that when we say consciousness as the third link, I believe?
Right.
Is that the same label?
No, so we don't say developmental clear light mind. We say that this clear light, conventional clear light mind is itself the developmental Buddha nature. So the word developmental goes with the Buddha nature. That means it's the fact that our mind has this quality, allows us to develop good qualities to get closer to Buddhahood. So we're talking about specific aspects of the consciousness there. In the 12 links, when you talk about consciousness, you talk about ignorance, first link, due to the condition of ignorance, karmic formations arise. I put it that way because in our class we've been talking about this dipasam, this just merely, sort of another way of talking about dependent arising, that phenomena arise dependent on conditions. So then independence on the, what do we say, karmic formations, there is a depositing of the karmic seed on the consciousness. That's generally how it's mentioned in the 12 links. So that is general consciousness. That's not talking about in the Chittamatra school, the Alaya Vijnana, where they say karma is deposited. It's talking about making an association with with your own general consciousness. And as we make connections with Tantra, we would say that is talking about also the subtlemost consciousness, which is going to, where those karmic seeds being in relation to that will be able to continue to future lives.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else have, say, in our previous classes, a question or about the reading, if you've read ahead? Nothing? Okay, good. So today we're starting on in Jimpa's text on page 196 in Venerable Jones' translation for the FPMT in that document you have on page 103. But I'm going to review a little bit from here, but this is where we're starting. Not originating from itself, namely, comes right after the verse 6.8 AB in Jimpa's translation, where he wrote, not originating from itself, and how from something other, not from both, and not from no cause, and how from no cause. So the commentary to that says, not originating from itself, namely from its own essence, how can the effect originate from something other? In other words, causes that exist as other through their own intrinsic characteristics. It cannot arise from them. So it can't arise from itself. It can't arise from something other. It does not originate from both self and other, as some schools might have. And how could it arise from no cause? It does not. So that's the commentary that we're talking about. But just to give some perspective, we were talking about, generally we're talking about Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, the first stanza, raising this kind of Vajra slivers, or as some people call diamond slivers, for alternatives. This is what is being discussed here, that if something were to inherently exist, it would have to if it were impermanent, if it was a product, if it was something that arose from causes and conditions, it would have to arise from either the cause being itself, the cause being something different than itself, a cause which is both its own nature and different. And the other possibility is being arising with no cause whatsoever. So that's sort of the context. So in that context, we've been talking about negations. Mikhail, what are the two kinds of negations? If we say the general, if we say two, what would those two be?
You heard non-affirming and affirming negation.
Right. Your volume is a little bit down low.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
or me. I'm not sure if others are hearing you. Could you say again?
Non-affirming and affirming negation.
Non-affirming negations. Do you know the Tibetan by any chance?
Megak.
Negak. Yeah. Me is a negative particle that means non-existent as opposed to y, which means existent. So megak, a refutation, which is, a negation, a mere negation. And what's the affirming negation called?
That's
What is the Tibetan for the affirming negation?
Mayingak.
Mayingak. So
Yeah.
mayin, the other kind of verb that talks about existence is being. So yinpa means to be, minpa or mayinpa means is not or not to be. Quoting Hamlet or something. So two kinds of negations. Megak, where you use the verb about non-existence, and mayingak, where you're talking about not being. So of the affirming negations, generally we say that the non-affirming negation that doesn't mention any divisions here previously, but Suvansh, do you remember the divisions of the non-affirming negations?
Venerable George, I'm sorry I don't.
Okay, good. Okay. Jennifer, do you remember?
The direct, indirect, and contextual.
Yeah, that's one way of saying there are non-affirming negations that negate, that affirm something directly. That what did you say the second one was?
Indirect.
Indirectly. Right?
So like fat devadatta would be indirect.
Fat,
Yajnadatta or devadatta.
yeah, Devadatta or Yajnadatta or whatever. The fat Devadatta that does not eat during the day, that would be implying indirectly, or would that be directly?
I think that would be indirectly, because you're not saying that he eats at night, but you're indirectly implying that.
Right. And then the contextual, Richard, do you know what the example of the contextual non-affirming negation would be? The example that we had in our texts?
I don't know if I do, but my book does, because I happened to glance down at it just as you mentioned the question.
Okay.
He is not a Brahmin when stated in a context where it has not yet been determined whether the person is of the royal or Brahmin caste. I
Yeah.
was literally looking at that when you called on me.
So when in general, if you say he is not a Brahmin, that's not going to affirm anything, right? Generally, but if you're in the context of disputing whether this individual that's come is worthy of your attention, whether they're a Brahmin or of the Kshatriya class, you could say he's not a Brahmin. So thereby you would know he's of this other caste. Or if you're deciding whether he's a Brahmin or no caste, low caste, you say he's not a Brahmin. By that context, that implies he's not a Brahmin. He is the other caste. So just following on from there, let's just read this again. Some assert that when a negation term is combined with a term that is an affirmative, it is not a non-implicative negation. It is not a non-affirming negation. Doris is getting a headache already with a couple of negatives there. this is incorrect. Just because the term Brahman is affirmative does not preclude the fact that the statement Brahmins do not drink alcohol represents a simple elimination of its object of negation. Just because Brahman is affirmative doesn't preclude the fact that the statement Brahmins do not drink alcohol represents a simple elimination of its object of negation. What is being eliminated there? Ida, do you know? When it says represents a simple elimination of its object of negation, what's its object of negation there?
The self.
Oh, Brahmins do not drink alcohol. What is its object of negation there? Brahmins do not drink alcohol.
They do not drink alcohol.
Or we say drinking alcohol would be
Oh,
what
okay.
is being negated, right? Would you agree?
Drinking alcohol.
Okay. So just because the word Brahman is in the sentence, that doesn't mean that that statement is not a non-affirming negation. It is a non-affirming negation. Just because it has Brahman in it doesn't mean that it's not a non-affirming negation. And then he says, Lama Khapa says, this is analogous to the fact that just because sound itself is an evident fact, or we say a manifest phenomenon, that just because sound itself is a manifest phenomena, evident fact, it does not preclude sound's impermanence being a concealed fact. Who would like to explain that? Let me see. Is anyone here? Snehi, what do you think? What does that mean?
I think it's saying that just because something is a gross phenomena doesn't mean that the subtle aspect of it, which in here is impermanence, is something that is not manifest. You can have both together.
Right. So how is that analogous to Brahmins do not drink alcohol? What's the point of that? It says this is analogous to the fact. This
Right.
referring to the statement, some assert that when a negation term is combined with a term that is affirmative, it is not a non-implicative negation. It is not a non-affirming negation. This is incorrect. Just because the term Brahman is affirmative does not preclude the fact that the statement Brahmins do not drink alcohol represents a simple elimination of its object of negation. How does this thing about the sound being a manifest?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but it feels like it's saying that I can make the statement that sound is a manifest phenomena, but that does not preclude some aspects of it not being manifest. I can't negate that.
Well, what if we said sound is impermanent?
If sound is impermanent,
Now, the word sound
That-
is a manifest phenomena, right?
right?
But when you say
But-
sound is impermanent, you're linking it with something which is
Not conceit, more subtle, more
yeah,
hidden.
or we say a hidden phenomena or concealed phenomena, right? Of the kinds of phenomena, if we take those divisions, manifest or evident being one, what are the other divisions of a phenomena like that?
Hidden and then very hidden, like karma would be very hidden,
Yeah, so
emptiness
okay.
and subtle impermanence.
Right? We would say slightly hidden and deeply hidden. We say chungze Chungze means slightly, just a little bit, like Chungwa means a little bit. Chungze and deeply hidden phenomena. So manifest, slightly hidden, deeply hidden, and impermanence is what? Subtle impermanence is what? Which of those three? Is that
Slightly hidden, slightly hidden.
Slightly hidden. Whereas sound itself is what?
Manifest or
Manifest phenomena.
evident. Yeah.
Yeah, evidence, Jimpa's translation being evident or manifest. That means it's something that presents itself directly, no need, don't need to use logic in order to understand it. It's evident or it's manifest right there before you. So Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that the fact that Brahmins do not drink alcohol. Brahman is an affirmative, and what you're negating is that they drink alcohol. They do not drink alcohol. That is a negation. So when you say sound is impermanent, making this analogy to that, it's analogous to the fact that just because sound itself is an evident fact, manifest fact, that does not preclude or exclude sound's impermanence being a concealed fact. That's kind of the analogy that's being made there. So it's worth thinking about going back over that.
Oh, Venerable George, can I ask a question?
Yeah, I was just, yeah, go ahead.
Just in making these points about direct, indirect, and contextual, like where does this fit in with where is this going? I'm getting lost.
Okay, that's why we're reviewing this. So this is we've been talking about these four alternatives that Nagarjuna proposes in the first stanza of his text, and that's what we're going to engage, how to prove these. In order to prove them, we have to know a little bit about negation, what negation means, that there are some negations that are mere negations or non-affirming negations that you've simply, when you say Brahmins do not drink alcohol, you're not implying anything else. You're not implying that other people drink alcohol or anything. Just on the basis Brahmin, you have negated that they drink alcohol. So although Brahman may have been appearing to your mind to begin with when you're analyzing, on that basis, what you've negated is that they drink alcohol. And so when that clicks in your mind, there would be just a vacuity that there was no drinking of alcohol. That's kind of the implication. Brahmins do not drink alcohol. So we're using that as a template here for when we're talking about the non-affirming negations of emptiness. And in that context, we're also, Lama Tsongkhapa is being encyclopedic a little bit, not entirely, talking about the affirming negations also, because that will also come up in some of our discussions also. So we have to know that's kind of the reason we're talking about that, because we're getting at trying to understand these four alternatives. Why were those four alternatives proposed by Nagarjuna? Because he said that the fifth level bodhisattva, in order to, when they enter into the sixth bhumi, they do so by understanding the 10 equalities of phenomena, right? The first of which is that phenomena do not arise inherently. They're all the same in that, at least the impermanent ones. You can't apply do not arise inherently to permanent phenomena, right? Because they don't arise. There's no cause and effect of them. So that's kind of the context. 10 equalities, that's why the first of which is Nagarjuna said, very easy way to understand the rest. And then in order to understand that, the supreme way that he proposed was these Vajra slivers, these four alternatives. And so they all involve negations. And so that's why negation comes up.
Thank you.
Zeppelin,
Yeah, that helps a lot. I was just really wondering why Lama Tsongkhapa was spending so much time on the different ways of affirming negations. But I guess that's coming up where we will.
or there may be some context coming up. Yeah, when
Thank you.
negations comes up. Yeah. Okay, good. So, and then finally he says, some others, this is just review from last time, just before where we're starting today. Some others say that when a negation is paired with the subject of the proposition, and in other words, he puts, e.g., Brahmins do not drink. Some other fact is implied. This too is incorrect. Brahman, for example, is the basis upon which one considers whether some other fact is being implied. It certainly cannot be the other fact that is being implied. Okay, so that's where we finished last time. And then now Lama Tsongkhapa is quoting Madhyamaka where Chandrakirti is rephrasing Fundamental Wisdom's first stanza, rephrasing Nagarjuna's stanza. So this is now from Madhyamaka. Chandrakirti writes, not originating from itself, how could it arise from something other? It can't arise from both, and how could it arise without any cause? I'm adding a couple of words in of explanation there. So this is where we're starting. So the commentary says, not originating or arising or being produced from itself. Phenomena are not produced from themselves, namely from its own essence. How could the effect, if you say how, because it's something that's non-existent, probably better to use the verb could. How could the effect originate from something other? Causes, in other words, causes that exist as other through their intrinsic characteristics. They cannot, it could not arise that way from something, arise from something other which exists by its own intrinsic characteristics, or in other words, something which is inherently other. Then it continues, it does not originate from both self and others, and how could it arise from no cause? It does not, or it would not. Could you say it does not? Sounds like you have to say it would not. What do you think, Richard? Are you a grammarian?
A little bit, but not at the level where I could make that make that determination for sure.
Okay, so this is just restating that first thing. It's not breaking any new ground. It's just, and you notice in Jimpa's text that which is bold are words taken from the root stanza that just came before, the verse 6, 8, A and B. So he has, in bold, he has not originating from itself, dash, namely from its own essence. The non-originating from itself is bold. That's, so when you see the bold text, you can go back and see it from the root text. Ida, what do you think?
Thank you, Venerable. Can we go back a little bit to the negations and the affirming phenomena and the negative phenomena? Let's see. Can I give you some examples of what I understand by that?
Okay.
Well, let's say affirmative phenomena would be cup.
A couple of, yeah, right.
Okay. A non-affirmative, a negative phenomena will be not a cup. Correct?
If you say not a cup, it doesn't.
Not a cup.
Yeah, it doesn't affirm anything else. It doesn't mean that
It
it's
just negates
okay.
that this is not a cup.
Creates cup.
Okay, so,
Yeah, that's one thing we didn't mention before. There are two kinds of phenomena in general,
mhm,
positive and negative phenomena.
right, that's what I'm trying
That
to
say
understand to
Khapa
get to the
and
rest ones.
Gopa. Yeah, go on.
Okay, so an affirmative negation,
So
would
that we're
be-
using now different meaning of affirmative. When you talk about positive or affirmative phenomena, maybe better to use positive phenomena and negative phenomena. So
okay,
when you're talking about
a
affirmative
positive,
negations, we're
a
talking about
positive negation would be
say
a
again.
cup, a positive negation or an affirmative negation, an implicative negation
Yeah.
would be a cup without water. Because it's both, it's focusing on both the cup and
A
without
cup
water.
without water would be a non-affirming negation.
Right.
So
No,
you're saying that it would be an affirming negation.
no, a non-affirming negation would be, there is no water in the cup.
And you're saying that by simply changing the way that that's expressed, you're saying a cup, how did you say, without water?
Right. A cup without water. Okay, well, let me think of something else. An affirming negation would be okay, a table without a tablecloth.
Okay, what was the example in our text of an affirming negation? What was the first example?
I don't, that's why I'm trying to find other more common examples because I didn't quite get it with
Well,
the
what was the
examples
example
of the
in our
text.
text of an affirming negation?
What was that? I can't remember. I can't find it in the text.
Well,
It will be that
negation is two times.
Madata does not eat during
Wait,
the
one
day.
second. 1 second. Let me just read from the text. Negation is of two kinds. Of the two, non-implicative negation, this means non-affirming negation, does not apply or affirm any other fact following the explicit elimination of the object of negation. Conversely, in the other hand, implicative negation or affirming negation implies or affirms other facts following the mind's elimination of the object of negation. For example, when wishing to demonstrate that one of two individuals belongs to the commoner's caste, if one utters the statement, he is not a Brahmin, that does not merely negate the person being a Brahmin, while being a negative statement, he is not a Brahmin, it also affirms in that context that the person belongs to a caste other than that of the Brahmins, namely, in this context, the commoner's caste. So there are three ways that the other facts can be implied. So you should read through that again. And why don't you send me an email? Because we've just gone over this a little bit. And although it's worth going over it again, maybe if you can send me an email, we can discuss it.
Okay.
Is that okay?
So can I just clarify something? So
Okay.
a non-affirming negation is a negation which does not leave something in the place of what has been negated, correct? So that would be like emptiness is a lack of inherent existence.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It
doesn't imply that
there's nothing else that it implies.
well, you better to say a sprout is empty of inherent production. What you're negating is inherent production. And although you use the word sprout, nothing else is implied. You use that just as the basis upon which you're negating something. And once that's negated, sprout does not appear to your mind. All that appears to your mind is a mere vacuity, which is the absence of inherent production. That would be a non-affirming negation. Like if I say to you, elephants do not exist in this room, you'd have to be here, or I'd have to move my camera around to show you that there are no elephants. You might think there's actually an elephant in my room. And I'm not talking about toy elephants or model elephants, actual big, snouting, with ivory tusks, a live elephant. So what is that? Is that an affirming negation or a non-affirming negation? Nadine, what do you think? Elephants, there are no elephants in this room.
But that would be an affirming negation, right? Because you're affirming something and you are.
I'm asking Nadine for consult.
I thought
So like in the quiz shows, you get to ask, you can ask another expert. Nadine, what do you think?
I thought it's not affirming because it doesn't affirm anything else in the room.
Right. That would be. So do you get that, Ida? There are no elephants in this room. So Geshe Zopa, when we talked about this, this went on for days. The example, he said there are numberless non-affirming negations. There is no horse in this room. There is no elephant in this room. There's no, I won't say there's no wasp in this room because there are wasps in this room. But, there are many things, all of which are non-affirming negations. So the category, one might think that non-affirming negation is just some very narrow category, but it includes many other things other than like refuting inherent production or something like that. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So we just read this, not originating from self. It does not originate from both self and others. How could it arise from no cause? It does not. Okay, that's where we're starting today. So now the commentary about that. Now, if there were things that possessed intrinsic existence, which is what we also translate as inherent existence, means it's the same word, but just different ways of translating it. If there were things that possessed inherent existence, this would require, or it would follow as a consequence that they arise by one of the four possibilities. If things were inherently existent, they would have to be, there's a pervasion that they would arise from one of these four ways. Within the notion of intrinsic arising or inherent production, there are only two possibilities. This is going back like a step. If you're talking about inherent production, there's two possibilities. From a cause or without a cause. They are produced or arise without cause, or they are produced from a cause. And then if they are produced from a cause, there are three possibilities. The cause could either be the same entity, the same nature as the effect. The cause could be a different nature than the effect, or it could be both the same and different at the same time. That's what it's saying here. Within the notion of intrinsic arising, there are only two possibilities: arising from a cause or from no cause. And so if you're wondering how could it arise with no cause, that's one of the things that Snehi was asking about before when we said things arise naturally, like the waterfall, or the shape of a pea, or the sharpness of a thorn. That's coming later. So things, there are two possibilities. They arise from a cause or from no cause. And within the possibility of arising from a cause, there are only three possibilities: arising from itself, arising from something other than itself, or arising from a combination of both self and others. Therefore, these four positions are exhaustive. What four positions? Jennifer?
Isn't that the tetralemma that we were discussing?
Yeah, what are those four positions?
The things arise from itself, from other, from both itself and other, or from none.
Right. Jimpa adds the word combination of self and others. That's a nice clarifying thing. Okay, so then the next outline says the logical proofs that establish this absence of an intrinsic arising, the lack of inherent production, through reasoning. So now we get to the nitty-gritty. These are the reasonings that prove that. This has four parts: refuting self-arising, refuting arising from others, production from others, refuting arising from a combination of both self and others, and refuting arising from no cause. That's a no-brainer, right? Four outlines. So we're going through them step by step. So first, refuting self-arising or self-production. Snehi, what do you think?
It's about 2 o'clock, Venerable George. I thought this might be a good place for you to stretch your legs.
Okay,
For a
you've
few
got
minutes.
a frog also, huh? Let me just read a little bit into this, and we'll take a little break. Okay, so if you need to make a cup of tea, we'll stop in for 3, 4, 5 minutes when I just go a little bit further. So refuting self-arising has two parts, two outlines. There are two. In the Tibetan, it says, maybe whatever this outline was, say if this was the first outline, Dangpo la ni, that means there are two to the first. So this is, and the word parts or sections or outlines. Refuting self-arising through the commentary author's reasoning. What is the commentary that's being referred to here? Do you know, Sean? The Chandrakirti's own commentary to that. So that's there's Madhyamaka Vatara has karikas, the root verses. It's sometimes called the Madhyamaka Vatara. And he wrote also Madhyamaka Vatara Bhasham. Bhasham means auto commentary. So he was explaining what each of those karikas, each of those verses means. So the commentary's author, so that's talking about the Bhasham, the auto commentary. Who's the author of that? Chandrakirti. So refuting self-arising through Chandrakirti's reasoning, basically, and refuting self-arising through Nagarjuna's reasoning, because Nagarjuna wrote the fundamental wisdom, right? So slightly different arguments. Those are the two. Make sense? Hapka, you look very healthy, Hapka. No, okay, we can have our organ recital on the phone later. Old folks, when we talk on the phone, we talk about, we have an organ recital, which means we recite all the organs that are failing. Anyway, so the first of those, refuting self-arising through Chandrakirti's reasoning, through the commentary author's reasoning. Okay, this is itself has three parts. So you might be, if you're trying to keep track of this in your head, it might be impossible. It might be worthwhile, as I did when we studied this at Institute of Lama Khapa, to make a flow chart. So the first outline has three, so you'd have three things, And each of those have other divisions. And then you can go down, you can kind of see like that more clearly where you are in the text. So anyway, Chandrakirti's reasoning to refute self-production has three parts. Refuting the views of philosophers who claimed to have realized suchness. That's the first one. Demonstrating how there is no self-arising even on the conventional level from the perspective unaffected by philosophical views. And then third, summarizing the essential points of these refutations. Sounds complicated, right? So yet again, more outlines. Refuting the views of philosophers who claim to have realized suchness has two parts, two outlines. Refuting arising from a cause that is identical in nature with its effects, and refuting that cause and effect are identical in nature. Wow. Okay. How are you doing, Mikhail? You're okay with it?
I'm not sure to grab the difference between these two outlines.
Good. Let's see here. How does, let me just look at how Joan translated these two. In Venerable Joan Nicel's translation, the FPMT document that you have, this is, you can see the numbers above that, number followed by a letter, followed by a number, followed by a letter, 4 dash, so forth. That was notation that I devised when we did translation of first the.
The meaning is quite different in.
So she translates refuting production from causes that are the same entity as itself. Refuting production from causes that are the same entity as itself. So that would mean itself would refer to the sprout, right? That's why you could use singular there. From causes or from a cause that is it's the same entity as itself. And refuting that the two, cause and effect, are one entity. Am I in the right place? That's the same thing, right? Refuting the cause and effect are identical in nature. She says refuting the cause and effect are one entity. Okay. So there are different things that are being refuted. The first one, refuting production from a cause that is identical in nature with its effects. So Chimpa's either adding some words. I don't have the Tibetan of that particular outline here. Either he's adding some words or Joan has left out some words. But first of all, this first outline, refuting production from causes that are the same entity as the effect itself. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about first. So refuting arising from a cause that is identical in nature with its effects. You ready? This is 3 parts. You can see why I wanted to take, I didn't want to take a break yet. I just wanted to get through this outline so that when we get back, we can get to the nitty gritty. So this is 3 parts. 1, if an effect arises from a cause that is identical to it in nature, its arising will be pointless, or you could say meaningless, or as Joan says, purposeless. Dunme. Dun means meaning or purpose, or welfare, even when we say for the welfare of sentient beings, for the purpose of sentient beings and so forth. If an effect arises from a cause that is identical to it in nature, that production, that arising would be pointless or, meaningless. You've already got the thing. Second, if an effect arises from a cause that is identical to it in nature, it's contrary to reasoning. And third, rejecting the defenses aimed at averting these flaws, or as Venerable Jones said, refuting the response or responses that dispel these faults. So some people try to get out of, we find faults with those reasonings, and then some people say, oh, but you're not right. Okay. So if an effect arises from a cause that is identical to it in nature, its arising will be pointless or meaningless. That is where we'll start after the break. So we'll take a couple minute break. I'll stretch my legs, and I'll see you. I'll keep my microphone on. So if you have a conversation, I can listen to the debates and chuckle along with you. Stir it up. Oh, good. That's what Sean was doing. Okay. Hanka, did you go out for some tea? Or you had it there? Good. Okay, you have it there already. Okay. So we're back. So after all of these outlines, we get down to actually talking about one thing here. So this is talking about the third line of the 8th verse of the 6th chapter. That is in the Karakas. So you could, the Karakas could be divided up in that way. They just sort of run in the Tibetan or the Sanskrit, but sometimes the numbers are put so you can separate them individual. So this is the 8th verse of chapter 6. And it's the third line of that. If things originate from themselves, nothing is gained. That's how Jimpa translates that. FPMT translation says, if that were to arise from that, there would not exist any of the qualities. Sounds quite different, right? So the Tibetan is quite, and the Sanskrit for the Tibetan is not any clearer than Sanskrit. The Tibetan says, Deni de lay. De means that. That is from that. If that arose from that, there would not be any yonden, not be any guna or any qualities. That's literally what it says. So that's what Jones' translation has more literally. If that were to arise from that, whereas Jimpa tells you what the that and the that are referring to. He says, if things originate from themselves, nothing is gained. Well, nothing is gained. It's sort of like a not literal translation of the Yonden Gayang Yomayin. There is not any quality at all to that. There is no, it doesn't bring anything. So it's a commentary to that, Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary. So it starts off with a question. On the basis of what reasons can one ascertain that things do not arise from themselves? How are you to know that things don't arise from themselves? What reasonings can you give? It's very simple. And the response, if things such as a sprout, for example, which is the agent in the context of something coming to arise, originate from themselves, nothing additional is gained by coming into being in such a manner. Whoa. Has anyone read ahead and read this before? So Nadine, what do you take that to mean?
if something exists already, then it cannot exist again or arise again because it's already there.
I think that's another reasoning. Here it says, if a sprout, for example, actually the Tibetan doesn't say that. It says what? It says a sprout. It doesn't say if things. And Jimpa says a sprout, for example. So he's adding some commentary there. The text just is saying, if a sprout, which is the agent in the context of something coming to arise, originate. So he uses, it's going back to his adding the word things. If a sprout, for example, which is the agent in the context of something coming to arise, originates from itself. He's got the plural there, originate from themselves, because he's added the word things at the beginning, but that's not in the text. Nothing additional is gained by coming into being in such a manner. This is different than the argument you were talking about, Nadine, about arising again. The reality of the sprout, which is in existence, which is its existence, has already been attained before at the time of the cause. So Jones' translation, Venerable Jones' translation says, while being produced, if that, comma, the sprout, were to arise from that, the agent of the action of production, there would not exist any of the special qualities which must occur in arising, because the self-entity of the sprout has already been attained at the time of the former cause. Okay, let's see if we can unpack this. Ida is looking expectantly. Snehi, what do you think?
I was waiting for you to explain, Venerable George.
Rocio, what did you say?
Well, it came to my mind then that the seed cannot be the sprout because it cannot produce something with different characteristics. So there would, like, okay, if the sprout is the same as the seed, we can't have a sprout because it would have different characteristics.
Yeah, that's not exactly what's being said here, but that may be true.
Okay.
So why are we talking about this? This is in response to the Samkhya philosophers who talk about arising from self. So Snehi had brought this up before because she's familiar with the Samkhya philosophy, and she was, what were you saying, Snehi, that, they do accept cause and effect, but they don't accept, what were you saying?
I think that was when we were talking about the Charvakas.
Oh,
And I
the
was saying
Charvakas.
that,
Right,
you know, they accept, they just don't accept karmic cause and effect.
right. Here, the Samkhya's view is one in which the cause and the effect on the worldly level, the manifest level, they are different, but their nature is the same. They come about from the same fundamental mula prakriti, the same fundamental quality that embraces all things. So So it's a little bit complicated. So here it says, while being produced from that, the sprout, while being produced, if that, the sprout, were to arise from that, so what is the first that is referring to the sprout. If the sprout were to arise from that, what's that second that? The agent of the action of production. What is the agent of the action of production here? Jennifer, do you have an idea?
Oh, I was trying to guess, but based on the previous sentences, would that also be the sprout? Because they say the sprout is the agent in the context of something to arise.
Yeah. So if you're talking about self-arisal that's arising from itself, then the sprout itself is also the agent of the arising of the sprout. Right? What do you think? Nadine, does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay. So Jimpa says if things, he's added the word things, you don't have to word that. If a sprout, for example, which is the agent in the context of something coming to arise, so he puts that phrase first. If that sprout originates from themselves, nothing additional is gained by coming into being in such a manner. So if a sprout, which is the agent in the context of the sprout coming to arise, when he says something, that would be the sprout itself. So we're only talking about the sprout here because we're talking about this concept of self-production. If something arises from itself. So the sprout is both the cause and the agent of the production, and the sprout is that which comes about because of that. Making sense? Rocio, you have your hand up. You must be tired. You can put your arm down. The blood is drained out by now. So you're not, I thought you had a question. Oh, you don't? Okay. I had your hand up there. Okay. Louise has a question.
Yes, then what's the point of a seed? If a sprout arises from a sprout, it does not arise from a seed. And a seed arises from a flower, from fertilized bits. Anyway,
Right.
point,
So
yeah. So
this is a little bit confusing
itself.
here because it sounds like you should say the sprout arises from the seed, but the view of self-arisal or self-production means something. Let's say the sprout arises from something which is the same nature as itself. So that means it would be arising from the sprout. So somehow the sprout must be coincident with the seed, must be the same nature as the seed in that causal phase. When it's a seed, it must also be the nature of the sprout, because the sprout, because if you talk about self-production, it must be produced from itself. So that seed must be itself, must be the sprout.
Sounds like cloning gone wrong. Wait.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So let's unpack this a little more. So while being produced in the FPMT translation, that means the sprout is being produced. While being produced, if that, the sprout, which is being produced, were to arise from that, the agent of production, which implies that's also the sprout, the agent being, in one sense, the agent is the seed, but because you're talking about self-production, the seed would be the same nature as the sprout. There would not exist any of the special qualities that must occur in arising thus, because the self entity of the sprout has already been attained at the time of the former cause. Okay, so Jimpa's translation continues. The reality of the sprout, which is its existence, has already been obtained before at the time of its cause. The reality of the sprout, the reality of the sprout, which is its existence, has already been obtained before at the time of its cause. So if you talk about the seed, that's the cause. The reality of the sprout must exist at that time. The reality of the sprout, which is its existence, has already been attained before at the time of its cause. If you're talking about self-production, if it's arisen from itself, the reality of the sprout must already exist or be obtained at the time of the cause, at the time of the seed. So somehow you can envision maybe some people misunderstanding and thinking that when you open some wet seed, Khapa will know well from his gardening, you can sometimes see a miniature sprout inside in the days before that seed were to open and to sprout up, right? Have you ever done that, Khapa? Do you know how to unmute? If you press the space bar. No, you're still muted. Holly has to go.
That's IT support.
I see IT support. Yeah. Okay. Don't worry. I won't ask you. I won't ask you. You can figure that out later. So the idea is, yeah, if you're on your iPhone, I don't know how you in Zoom, how you unmute. You don't have a keyboard. Oh, there you are.
Now can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes. The botanical reality may be different than this philosophical discussion, but there is a sprout in every seed. It's in there. It's dormant.
Even in a dry seed before it's been moistened?
Yes.
Okay.
I just heard a guy he sprouted something that was 2,000 years old that had been in a tomb in Egypt, and it grew. But anyway,
right.
Yes.
Right. I think I read that also. Okay. So that's one conception that people might think that's what they're meaning, that the sprout already exists in some miniature form in the seed, which is as you say, a botanical reality, right?
Right.
Okay, but that's not what is being talked about this here.
They couldn't see the microscopic level of it when they were making this argument. So, it's
right. Well, they were some kids were aware of putting, a big lima bean seed, and
those two halves.
Even kids can do that in kindergarten, right?
Yeah, the two halves are called cotyledons, which means seed leaf in Latin. Seed leaf. And you'll notice if you grow beans, then the first true leaf comes out and it looks much different. The cotyledons are these sort of oblong, smooth margined things. And then the next leaf comes out and it's got 3 leaflets on it. So,
so that's what some people think self-arising means. That, oh yeah, that's logical because that proto sprout is already there, but that's not what's being meant here. It says, if a sprout, for example, which is the agent in the context of something coming to arise, for the agent in the sprout coming to arise, originates from itself, nothing additional is gained by coming into being in such a manner. If the sprout already exists, there's nothing gained in so-called production or arisal, but that's what's recognized in the world. We say the sprout has arisen, or maybe that's Christ has arisen. The sprout has been produced. There's a distinct recognition that something has happened that's different now, but nothing would be gained if the sprout already existed in the cause. So here, the text continues, here Samkhya's maintain there is no denying. The Tibetan doesn't say there's no denying. They say that it's true that the Samkhya's maintain that it is true that diverse causes and conditions bring forth a single common effect. Excuse me. For the Samkhyas, there's 2 levels of nature here. There's the relative nature where cause and effect are distinct. They maintain there's no denying that diverse causes and conditions bring forth a single common effect. So what would be the diverse causes and conditions? So one cause would be it's kind of, in Buddhist terminology, we'd say substantial cause. The seed is a substantial cause of the sprout, if we're talking about sprouts. Other conditions would be cooperative conditions, moisture, fertilization, sunlight. Even if you have fertilization and moisture, if you're in a dark room, they're not going to grow very well, if at all, other than mushrooms. So the Samkhya's maintain there's no denying that diverse causes and conditions bring forth a single common effect. A single common effect would be the sprout. For this to be possible, they assert that a single primal substance must pervade them all, a shared single nature of these causes and conditions. And I saw Nadine's hand up for a moment. Nadine, do you have a question first?
Thank you very much, George. Stephen was asking this question. What exactly is the difference between causality and conditionality? The difference between cause and condition? What is exactly the difference?
Well, condition is different than conditionality. When we're talking about mere conditionality, it does have the word condition in it, but here we're talking about causes and conditions. When we studied, which courses did we studied? Low Rig and Drupta and so forth. We said that when we talk about cause and effect, there are different kinds of causes. There are causes which are, let's say, substantial causes that become where the substance of something becomes the effect, like say the substantial cause of a vase that you're throwing on a potter's wheel is the clay. So that same substance of the clay continues on to the pot that you've thrown, that same substance continues on after it's put in the kiln, after it's baked, if that's the right term. And even when you put on the glaze, that same substance continues through. So the seed is like the substantial cause of the sprout. But there are also conditions. In Tibetan, we say ken. Cause is gyu, and condition is ken. We say gyu ken, causes and conditions. So when we say that, usually we're talking about the principal cause and the subsidiary or the cooperative conditions for that to come about. It's not enough that the seed be there. You need to have some moisture, some nutrient in the form of fertilization or manure, however you want to say it, in a proper soil. You have to have sunlight. Those are called cooperative conditions. So that's different than the discussion about mere conditionality. Although the mere conditionality is talking about conditions, that's not relevant to this discussion right now.
Thank you so much.
Savansh.
Thank you, Venerable George. Could you please help, based on these two sentences of this paragraph, could you help to contrast the views of the Samkhyas and the Buddhists? Okay, Samkhyas on the one hand and the Buddhists on the other. So here's how I read these two sentences. The Samkhyas agree there are causes and conditions that bring forth different phenomena.
Right.
That's sentence one. Sentence two, yet they assert that there is a single primal substance that must pervade them.
Right.
Now
So,
I'm going to take these two and I'm going to contrast it to the Buddhist position.
Mhm.
The Buddhist position also is cause and effect at the conventional level, yet the Buddhists also say that they don't use the word primal substance, but they say all phenomena are pervaded by Buddha nature.
or you could say that all phenomena are empty of intrinsic existence, of true existence.
Well, I think that I wouldn't say what you just said, which is true. I mean,
Buddha, when you say all phenomena are pervaded by Buddha nature,
correct.
what that means, Buddha nature means the non-abiding Buddha nature, which is the non-intrinsic existence of them, the non-inherent
Yes, true.
existence of them, their emptiness of true existence. It's just,
True.
if you say it, if you say they're pervaded by Buddha nature, that Buddha nature is not the same Buddha nature talking about an individual. Usually when we talk about an individual, we talk about the emptiness of our own mind as being the ultimate Buddha nature of a person, and the lack of obstruction to the arisal and dispersal of events within the consciousness is the conventional Buddha nature, like we talk about in our meditation at the beginning. But it's applied in the scriptures also, Buddha nature, when you apply it to other phenomena other than the self, the person, that means their non-inherent existence, their emptiness of inherent existence. So that's what I would say. There is an analogy there. You could say that you might think in your mind, the Samkhya universal nature is like emptiness that pervades all phenomena, yet on the conventional level, the cause and effect are distinct. So what's your response to that?
Well, I think that, Venerable George, when I look at the second turning talks about negation, okay? But the third turning, okay, talks about the luminous aspect of it, which is a positive statement.
Right.
And so when I look at a single primal substance, I look at that single primal substance. I mean, I agree with you that the Samkhyas don't talk about emptiness. Yes. But when the Samkhyas talk about single primal substance, they state it as a positive.
Right.
And so when I compare it to, the within Tibetan Buddhism at large, there are different mindsets. And some mindsets believe in Buddha nature standing as an affirmative.
Right, right.
So therefore, that's the sense of my question, which is that for those who maintain Buddha nature as a positive, what's the difference between the Samkhya position and the Buddhist position?
So this subject is has to be unraveled in more detail. It's not the exact time to talk about it right now.
Got it.
But in general, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said that the assertions, well, first of all, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma is was exemplified by the sutras like the Samni Nirmochana Sutra and the Tathagata Garbha Sutra and so forth, that seem to indicate a positive kind of phenomena. And in the Nyingma and Kagyu traditions especially, they talk about this kind of ultimate nature as being a positive phenomena, not a non-affirming, to get back to double negatives again, right? They say it's a positive phenomena. But what they mean by that, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has clarified in some of his books when talking about Dzogchen and some other subjects, that they come together at the end. If you understand correctly, there's no contradiction between them, so that phenomena are empty of inherent existence, is not undermined by the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. But that's a discussion that may come up a little bit later, Subhash.
Okay,
It's not so much that, yeah, it's not so much that they're different. Well, you could say they're different mindsets. That seems right. It should be a positive. The ultimate nature, or the, what did you call it? The Buddha nature. You said Buddha nature pervades all phenomena. Buddha nature should be some kind of positive phenomena. But just in the same way that for some people, the Chittamatra view seems right. Right? For some people's minds, I remember when we were studying some of the Chittamatra texts with Lama Yeshe, the first text he taught us about emptiness was the Uttanamshe, one of the 5 texts of Maitreya. And John Landau was helping in the translation. Every day he'd meet with Lama Yeshe in Lama's room and work out the English translation of the stanzas Lama was going to be talking about. And John Landau said to me, he said, to me, the Chittamatra view seems quite reasonable, quite right. And in our own development, there may be a time when the Chittamatra view makes a lot of sense. Then later, because of reaching that level of understanding, if you apply the Svatantrika Madhyamaka logics to contradict the Chittamatra, one can say, oh yeah, that made sense before, but now I see with some subtlety that was just an approximation. So I think the same thing, something similar when you talk about Buddha nature as being a positive phenomena. There is something positive with everything. There's always something positive on the conventional level, and something, let's say, a non-affirming negation on the ultimate level. So it could be related to that. Positive could be related to the clear light nature of the mind, or let's say the mind itself, which is a positive phenomena, right? Would you say that the mind is a positive phenomena?
Yes, I mean, one way of looking at it is mind is positive, but another way of looking at it is mind is non-existent.
What way of looking at it is mind non-existent?
No. So sorry, not as non-existent, but as empty. It
yeah,
is
yeah.
existent, but it is empty.
Right. Yeah. So that those two are together like the two sides of a coin. They can't be separated, the mind and its emptiness. So it could be referring, when you're talking about the Buddha nature as being a positive, it could be talking about that other half of the coin, not the emptiness of the mind, but the substratum that has that empty quality, the mind itself. But anyway, that will be the discussion of that will come later, and it's very important. So thanks for bringing that up. Okay, is that okay, Subhash? Okay.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Okay.
Venerable
I was just
Sri.
reading one of the notes. So Chimpa's text said, here Samkhya's maintain there is no denying that diverse causes and conditions bring about a single cause, or the FPMT translation. Regarding this, the Samkhya's claim that mutually different individual causes and conditions have a single shared result. So that's pretty clear. Then continuing from that, for this to be possible, for a multitude of causes and conditions to bring about one result in the end, like say, for instance, our perfect human rebirth has come about from many causes and conditions. Sort of the substantial cause is our continuum of our mind. That is what is existing here now. The conditions were creating merit and collection of wisdom through charity, morality, and the other perfections, and prayer, wishing that in the future you could be a bodhisattva or so forth and so on. Those are the cooperative conditions. So for this to be possible, they assert that a single primal substance must pervade them all. That means pervade the causes and conditions and the result, a shared single nature of these causes and conditions. So here, the FNT translation says, and moreover, causes and conditions indispensably involve the unitary principle, which is of a single nature. Chimpa translated as primal substance. So in Tibetan, that is the word soul, sowo. Sowo means, what do we usually translate? Fundamental, no, not fundamental, principle, I guess. So in Sanskrit, this is the word prakriti. Prakriti. And the so is prakriti. And the Rangshin Chikpe soul in the Tibetan, that is talking about the fundamental nature, the mula prakriti. So this has to pervade all of these things. So let's go a little bit further. So there is a fundamental nature that pervades all things. And when they manifest, they have their own individual existences, like causes and conditions and so forth. Therefore, continuing in Jimpa's text, whatever is the nature of the cause, such as a barley seed, for example, is the same nature as that of the conditions, the water, the fertilizer, and so forth, sunlight and so forth. So they would all be, from the Sankhya point of view, they're all the same nature. That's why I was saying a little bit similar to saying they all share the nature of emptiness. You know, in emptiness, there's no difference between them, right? But that's not what they mean here by their nature, their prakriti. So continuing, likewise, the nature of the sprout, because we were just talking about the conditions there. Now, the nature of the sprout, which is the result, and the nature of its causes and conditions are also the same. This is where we're getting to the point that the Samkhya proposition that the sprout arises from the nature of the sprout, right? Because they all share this prakriti, this fundamental nature. Likewise, the nature of the sprout and the nature of its causes and conditions, one of the causes being the seed, are also the same. They are of the same nature. This they assert to be the nature of all manifestations of phenomenal reality. Jimpa makes a note there to, if you want to know more about the Samkhya, he mentions some encyclopedia reference to the Samkhyas. I don't know if that's easily available. I wasn't able to find it. Maybe it is. But FPMT translation says, and similarly, the nature of a sprout and the nature of its causes and conditions are asserted as being here and being there, since such is asserted as the nature of all transformations. So you might be completely confused by that because you don't see in Jimpa's translation anything about here and there, right? Let me see here. Where is this? This is on page 104. And similarly, and moreover, does anyone see where that is in the document, which paragraph that is? In the FPNT translation? Oh yeah, here it is. In the reply, the second paragraph, near the end of the second paragraph, the reply is, therefore, that which is the nature of barley, the cause, is also the nature of water, manure, and so forth, or as Jimpa translated, fertilization, the conditions. And similarly, the nature of a sprout and the nature of its causes and conditions, the nature of the sprout and the nature of the causes and conditions are asserted as being here and being there. Jimpa doesn't have anything like that in his sentence, right? So this is talking about the Tibetan phrase Paryin and Suryan in the Tibetan. Par, when we talk about par and sur, when we talk about relativity, we're saying that when we talk about phenomena being merely relative, like say, for instance, the concept of being far. So for me, the trees out in my yard or the mountain I see beyond it are far. Par in Tibetan, P-H-A-R. But and I think, here, my glasses are sur, are here, relative to me. But if I were to go over to the mountain, leaving my glasses on my table here, the mountain would be here, sur, and the glasses and my room and my computer would be there, off in the distance. Here and there are just relative. They're relative where you're standing, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so this is a term that comes up. I don't know the Sanskrit of this term, but this is part of the Samkhya philosophy. So Venerable Joan was right to put it in here, literally here, although it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And similarly, the nature of a sprout and the nature of its causes are asserted as being here and being there. That means that the nature is the same, whether it's here or whether it's there. It pervades everything. Okay. Since such is asserted as the nature of all transformations, or as Jimpa says, the manifestations. This they assert to be the nature of all manifestations of phenomenal results. So from the Prakriti, when things become manifest, they still share that same fundamental nature with the Prakriti, the fundamental nature, which is both here and there, right? Pervading everywhere. Yet they appear to be distinct on that conventional level. Geshe Zopa said, this is from July 9th, 2002 in the morning. I'm not sure, Hapka, if you were there at that time. He said, for the Samkhya, Rangshin Paryan Suryan, this is what I was just talking about, par being there or being here. For Samkhya, Rangshin Paryan Suryan, your general nature and my general nature are the same nature. So you and I are the same nature. This was a comment that Geshe made when he gave teaching. So that Joan's translation of here and there is not some sort of nitpicking grammatical statement. It actually has some significance to the Samkhya philosophy. Sean, what are you thinking?
I mean, I'm just a little confused as to, do they describe this nature at all that they're talking about? Because clearly, I mean,
yeah, they don't talk. They talk a lot about it, but Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary expects that we already know that, the presentation of the Samkhya. So you can, if you look in some of the tenets text, if you have it like Geshe Zopa and Jeffrey Hopkins' text on tenets or other tenets texts, if you see the non-Buddhist schools, you can see some of the tenets of the Samkhya. We can go into a little bit about that next time, maybe even on Monday.
I mean, is it
remember next week? But by the way, next week we have off. The week after that, we start again the next module of eight classes. So next week, Diana reminded me to tell you or to remind you that the clocks change next week, right? So in case you were in some place where you were for a whole week, you weren't aware that the time changed, the class will be at a different time. So maybe if you're in Malaysia or some other place at a different, you're not going by the United States saving, daylight savings or whatever. What do we say in the spring? How does the thing go? Spring forward, fall back, right? So in the spring, you push the clock an hour forward at this date when the time changes in America. I don't know. Do you have that in Europe, Mikhail or Nadine?
Yeah, and we're changing a 1 week difference with United States.
Okay, that'll be even more complicated. So anyway, so Sean, continue.
Well, I mean, is it similar to saying, like in physics, you can say all the material world is made up of energy, but we break those things down into different components, like seeds and water and fertilizer.
Yeah, maybe there's some similarity there. Yeah, that might be a good analogy. But the Samkhya view about the fundamental nature and how things manifest out of it, how they appear out of it. All of those is very, very complicated, but you can take a read in some of the text texts, or take a look in Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. He has a nice explanation of the Samkhya tradition there. I'll go on a little bit about it in our next class, or maybe on Monday, also from Geshe Zopa's presentation at this point. Geshe Zopa went out of his way to explain a lot of the Samkhya views, like about Prakriti, Mula Prakriti, and so forth, and how things appeared, and the difference between a person and mind or awareness, much different than the Buddhist view. But you can take a look in Jeffrey Hopkins' notes or Tenet's text. Monday, I may read a little of Geshe Zopa's explanation of that. Okay, so we're going to end there. So we will start next time with this sentence. Now, since they do accept that the seed and the sprout are distinct. Let's see. There we go. We'll start there next time, 2 weeks from today. Next week we have off. Before we end, how are you doing? Any questions? Probably a lot of questions that you hesitate to ask because they're not completely clear, right? So when we talked about negatives at that moment, it seemed like a little bit unclear. Maybe having it settle for a week and then going over it a little, maybe it's a little bit clearer. I think what we've talked about today will become more clear. When you think about it a little, go back and read it, compare the translations, look at something about the Samkhya, and then when we talk about it again in our next class, it may become more clear. But any other questions or Dharma itches you need scratched before we end? How are we doing? Everyone okay?
I'm just wondering if we're going to update the text with your own translation with modern understanding of our own philosophical systems.
I didn't catch, Sean. Say again.
Instead of comparing it to Samkhyas and all these Indian philosophies that I don't even know if they still exist, it seems like you would want to update the text to reflect the current philosophical understanding.
Well, let's see. Would current physicists or biologists or what is it called? Botany experts, botanical experts, yeah. Would they say that the sprout is produced from itself? From its own nature? Yeah, so it's not the same. The Samkhya have a particular view about this nature that has pervaded, it pervades the seed and its result and everything. So it's a little, it sounds like, why are we studying about the Samkhya? Because although there may be, many Samkhyas in India, still Samkhya schools still striving, no? Snehi?
No, I don't think so, because philosophically, it's very hard to defend the Sankhya positions as dualist philosophy.
Okay. But there are some Samkhyas still existing in India, right? Some adherents of the Samkhya position?
I really haven't come across any.
Okay, not well known at any rate. Okay, I've heard that there are.
I mean, people still study it and teach it because it is the basis of Vedanta philosophy. That is, a lot of it is borrowed from Sankhya philosophy, and it's the basis of the yoga system. But as a philosopher, I think it's hard to hold that view and defend it. So,
right. We'll see that. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mintu, before we end, showing yourself. Thank you so much. Oh, good to see you. Yeah.
Yeah,
What's
I have
up?
I have a question. So does a lot of this discussion about the Samkhya, does it kind of resonate with what usually the
I
people
couldn't quite catch what you said. Say a little more clearly. A lot of this discussion about what, Samkhya,
yeah, Samkhya,
right?
yeah,
And
does
continue.
it remind us of the discussion of there is a some sort of creator God in the Abrahamic religion, and then the God say that I created humans in his image,
Yeah. What about that?
So is it so basically it's how do I say, like, does it sound the same to you in that way?
I'm sorry. Say again.
Does it sound the same
Oh,
as
does it sound the same to you that God created people in his image? Or are you talking
Yes.
about I don't think so. Doesn't sound the same to me, but we can discuss it on Monday. So I'm giving you an impetus to come to discussion on Monday. You've come once or twice, I think, maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. Okay. So any last questions before we end? We okay? Okay. So let's dedicate our merits and our collection of wisdom. I say that because when we talk about, when we say Gewa Di, the Gewa includes both the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom. They're both virtuous. So sometimes when they translate Gewa, they say merits, but that's only one part of the virtues. So okay. So beyond that, we have the dedication that'll be below that, Snehi. Due to these virtues, not due to these merits, due to these Gewa, due to these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha. That means may I quickly become a Guru Buddha and lead all wandering beings without exception into that very enlightened state. So this is one of the primal dedications. So we're thinking, due to these merits, may I become a Buddha, and then upon becoming Buddha, may I lead sentient beings into that same state. And then the prayer is not exactly a dedication, but it can be used as a dedication. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen, may it arise and grow, and may that which has already arisen in my mind stream not diminish, but continue to increase more and more. And the prayer for the quick return, swift return of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Khyentse Lama Zopa Rinpoche, peerless teacher and assembly of children of the victorious ones, that means the Bodhisattvas, you Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, conqueror Losang, that's a way of referring to Losang Drakpa, Lama Tsong Khapa is being already enlightened, father and sons, together with your lineage, all objects of refuge of the infinite realms, please now bestow the virtue and goodness to accomplish this prayer. In upholding and spreading the Muni's precious and complete teachings through explanation and practice, the two main ways of upholding the teachings, you wore the armor of patience, sopa, that is never discouraged. Incomparable Venerable Guru, to you I make this request. Sole gateway through which all benefit and happiness emerge, while striving exclusively for the welfare of the conqueror's teachings and also for mother living beings, mother wandering beings, mother sentient beings, you suddenly departed to peace. At this I was distraught. I lost hope. Nevertheless, through the undeceiving truth of the oceanic blessings of the three jewels and the great waves of bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas, may a smile of a new reincarnation swiftly beam in glory for fortunate disciples. So this last verse is talking about the declaration of truth. When one has very high realizations, one could call upon the truth of certain things, such as the blessings of the three jewels and the waves of the great waves of the bodhicitta of the bodhisattvas. You can say, because of this truth, may this take place. This is an expression of that. And then a final dedication to all our spiritual guides, you who are my eyes for viewing all the infinite scriptures, the supreme gateway for we fortunate ones traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by mercy, illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So thank you for participating. We had small class today. What do we have right now? 4, 8, 12, 14. Maybe we had 16, 17 at the most. Several people are traveling off sick, doing other things, but hopefully they will catch up. I look forward to seeing you this last discussion group on Monday, not the last ever, but the next week when there's a break, we won't have a discussion group on that following Monday. And hope to see you 2 weeks from today. Don't forget to take care of your clocks and see you soon. Thanks for coming. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Venerable
Thank you, Venerable
George.
George.
Thank you, Venerable
Thank you,
George.
Venerable.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
rest.
Sine.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you for everything.